wasn't recording, and so I need to record. Okay, so I'm going to welcome everybody once again. We're going to have a little bit of a reset. Apologies for that. I won't do the whole spiel that I just went through, and I'll just sort of skip right to the reminder of our exhibition that's up right now, our winter exhibition in our gallery at the Center for Visual and Performing Arts. We have Work, Fight, Give. It's an exhibition of posters from World War II, posters that were meant to support the war effort and to sort of inspire people to make the kinds of sacrifices that were needed in terms of whether they were going without or making financial donations or just in general maintaining sort of a spirit behind the war effort. Additionally, during this time, we also have another exhibition running concurrently in the center of the gallery. It's the Labor Camp Daily COVID-19 Report poster project. It's an artist named Peter Scharringhausen, and he works under the name Labor Camp. And those posters are specifically about what it was like or what it's been like living through a pandemic, and not just the pandemic, but all of the things that are happening in the background as well, from politics to protests to just the emotional toll it's taken on individuals who have been alone or who have lost people. And hopefully Peter will be, I say hopefully, but Peter will be joining us next week on March 11th to talk a little bit about his posters and why he was so enthusiastic about showing them alongside the World War II posters. There are some connections there formally when you look at how those posters are designed and the subject matter that Peter chose to represent in those posters. The week after that, actually it is the week after that, on March 18th, Ryan Bennett, South Shore Arts studio coordinator and ceramics instructor, will be talking a little bit about his ceramics practice. And so really tonight is kicking off a stretch of art and focus presentations. There is of course the one with Peter, but March 4th tonight is Summer Scharringhausen is our director of education. Then we have, as I said, March 18th, Ryan Bennett. And then the art and focus after that, as it is scheduled now, is myself and a friend of mine with whom I collaborate or have collaborated with for a number of years. And so we're giving you a little glimpse into the creative lives of some of the staff at South Shore Arts. We're giving you a little piece of ourselves and letting you know what it is we do and how we participate in the arts as practitioners ourselves. A couple little bits of housekeeping before we get started, and I bring Summer on to talk about her art. I want to remind everybody who's watching on YouTube, because we do stream these events live via our YouTube channel, that if you want to comment or want to engage with us tonight, we don't monitor the questions, the chat window on our YouTube live feeds. We only monitor our chat and our Q&A features in our Zoom platform. So if you want to participate by making some comments or asking some questions tonight, make sure you hop on over to the Zoom feed, the Zoom presentation, in order to do that. Otherwise, we're happy to have you on the YouTube channel, and you'll get the same experience as a viewer. Also, for anybody who wants to share this afterwards, the presentation will be archived on our YouTube channel. Sometimes it goes up immediately afterwards, but sometimes we clean it up a little bit and edit out some footage that might be a little too much on the beginning or a little too much on the end. So we promise that we have the archived presentation up on our website the Monday following the Thursday night presentation. So on Monday the 8th by 10 o'clock in the morning, this presentation will be up. You can either access it through our website or through our YouTube channel. Tonight, we're gonna mostly have a sort of lecture presentation from Summer. We'll monitor the chat and the questions in case there's something kind of the moment, and I'll kind of interject and ask Summer that question, but we're going to hold most of the questions for the end, I think, at which time Summer is encouraged people to not just ask her questions about her creative practice and the art she's sharing tonight, but also if anybody would like to talk about their experiences in motherhood. As you'll see, that's relevant to tonight's topic if you haven't already seen the title of tonight's presentation. I think without any more announcements, I'm going to go ahead and invite Summer to turn on her camera and her microphone. And I'm going to turn off my camera and microphone so that you only see Summer. So Summer, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Micah. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Summer, I think you're still on mute, just so you know.
I shouldn't be. It says I'm not muted.
You know what? I did this last time with Matthew. I apologize. I had turned down my sound. I couldn't hear you. Everybody else could. So I apologize for that.
No problem. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us. I am going to be sharing some pieces from a series of paintings I've been putting together about my motherhood experience. I call the series My Motherhood Is, and then there's a blank to fill in, which I do so with the images that I've created. So first, just a little bit about me. I was born in Dallas, Texas. But I did not live there for very long. All my family is down there. I have lived kind of all over the Midwest, mostly in Minnesota. Currently, I am in St. John, Indiana. I'm an artist. I'm also a mother. And I've been an art teacher for a long time, and I've also worked in arts administration for a long time. But I've been creating artwork for a little over 20 years now. So a little bit about my artwork pre-motherhood. I had a lot more time to be creating artwork. So, you know, I was working in larger sizes and messier materials, sometimes even toxic materials. And I was fortunate enough to have a community of other artists that works together. And specifically, there's a picture of a friend of mine, Kara Hendershot, and we had our collaborative called Happy Accidents that we were working in for a long time. So you can see a few of our pieces there. And yeah, my motto was the messier, the better. If I'm not covered in paint and it's not getting all over the place, I'm not doing something right. So that was kind of how I worked before I had children. So then I had children, and for about 5 or 6 years, really wasn't creating a whole lot of work. You know, I would create little pieces here and there to submit for some kind of exhibition, group exhibition, but it was not a regular practice anymore. And I just felt like I didn't have the room to create the artwork. I didn't have the space to do it. I couldn't make a big mess. I was worried about obviously toxic things lying around with babies crawling around on the floor and putting everything in their mouths. So I just had a period of inactivity until I finally realized that I just needed to change my practice. That if I couldn't create giant pieces and make a mess and spend hours and hours in the studio, then I needed to find a way that I could be creating artwork in the space where I lived in something more portable, in something less messy. So what I actually did was I got this spiral bound watercolor journal, and I got some Sharpies, which I've always used Sharpies, and I really love Sharpies in general. So that was a continuation from pre-motherhood to current artwork practice. But yeah, I got out the Sharpies, and then I got this little travel size watercolor kit and just started challenging myself to create one painting per week, but they were very small. I was just doing a 5x7 size that was manageable for me. I could carry it around, I could do it quickly. And I just tried to focus more on the practice of creating and not so much on technical perfection. not so much on making a mess anymore, but just on the practice of creating. And I wanted it to be about my motherhood experience because that was what I was going through right then. But also because there were a lot of things I experienced in motherhood that surprised me, that I didn't ever hear people talk about until after I was kind of coming through that. So I wanted to use these paintings as a way to share what I was going through, and then hopefully connect with other mothers out there that might see the artwork. So I had a few influences for this whole project. I have kind of these snapshots. They look like little photographs. Sometimes I work on them from photographs and sometimes from real life. But that was kind of influenced by Mary Cassatt, and that's kind of obvious how that relates, and her paintings about her experience of motherhood. There's a lot of symbolism that's kind of influenced by Frida Kahlo, and then a friend of mine, Jim Zazowski, does these shadow box paintings. They look like a shadow box, but they're actually a painting. And so I have a bunch that are kind of inspired by that idea, but taking artifacts from motherhood. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get there. So this is the first one that I created once I decided to challenge myself this way. It's called Messy, and I was sitting on the porch watching my children play in the yard, doing exactly what you see here, spraying the hose everywhere, making a mud pile, and just getting really messy. So I was working from life, and it was just literally what I was experiencing in that moment. And I just took a few minutes to quickly sketch it out. And then later on that week, I was able to paint it. So just one thing to note is that I have put these in chronological order, not of my life. You're going to see it jumps around as far as like the age of my children, but of when I actually created them. And it's not necessarily the order I would put them in if I was hanging an exhibition, but just for the sake of going through the process and kind of how I got where I got through all of these, I decided to order them that way. So just wanted to throw that out there, that's how these are ordered. This one is called Exhausting. Motherhood is exhausting. That one's no secret. I wasn't expecting anything else when I got into it, but I kind of like how this one came about because I had a friend of mine who was currently at home with two babies, and mine were a little older at this point, but I did not forget how exhausted I was during that first year of their life. And so I kept sending her images of this one and saying, does she look tired enough? And she kept texting me back and saying, more tired, more tired. And so I probably added more tired about 6 times on this one. And thanks to the input from my friend who was going through it right at that moment. So this one is called Overloaded. These first few were created in 2019. I started it in the summer of 2019. That was when I started this project, and it's still going on. I don't do one a week anymore, but yeah, it is still continuing. This one is called Vulnerable. And Scrappy. This is one of the artifact ones that I was mentioning. So I kind of thought to myself, because I'm trying to kind of explore what is motherhood for me. And then I'm hoping that others will connect and share their stories as well through this. But I was thinking, gosh, if you were trying to explore motherhood or understand motherhood in the future, and you're looking back and trying to find artifacts to study what the motherhood experience is, that's kind of what my thought process was when putting some of these together. So these single objects are kind of like the artifacts of the motherhood experience. And so that's what this one is part of. This one is called Tender and Disregarded. I don't know any mother who also works outside of the home that has not had to sit either in a closet or a stinky bathroom and pump. So that's what this is about. It's just amazing the places that we can we can get stuck with, when I was my first time motherhood experience of going back to work, I was teaching at a school, and yeah, they gave me a closet that didn't lock. And so it was a high school, and I would be sitting there in this dark closet, sitting on the floor trying to pump, and I could hear all these teenagers moving around outside. And I was just terrified someone was going to accidentally open the door. It was it was not the most relaxing experience, I will say that. And I just know so many people with similar experiences, and just nothing that I would have ever thought about before going through it. This one is called Solitude. Sometimes a little solitude's a great thing. Sometimes motherhood can feel a little lonely and isolating. So this is kind of about both, like the good and the bad of solitude. And Kid Graffiti Everywhere one. So a bunch of these also, I haven't mentioned this kind of series within the series. I just did some fun paintings that were quick and easy and enjoyable to put together, but I didn't invest too much into them, because then my whole purpose was to give my kids the Sharpies and let them just go to town and draw on top of my paintings once they were dry. So, the first few, they were kind of nervous, like, really, I'm allowed to draw on your artwork? I've always drilled it into them. Don't draw on people's artwork. If it's not yours, don't draw on it. But I said, you have my permission. And so we had some fun with these. And here's another one from that Kid Graffiti mini series. And another. I have two children, I should mention, Ethan and Kevin. And so right now, Ethan is 8, Kevin is 6. Obviously, when this started, they were younger than that. And I just would let them take turns, like it's Kevin's turn or it's Ethan's turn. So usually these are, the Kid Graffiti is by one or the other, not both, with the exception of one, which we'll get to. Here's another one of the artifact ones. And overwhelming, this was a big one that I feel like, man, I had no idea what was coming. Every time I had the opportunity to take a shower, which is not frequent when you have someone under the age of 1 in your care, it was just an emotional moment, to finally have some time to be by yourself. Maybe there's sometimes also a baby in a chair right outside the shower, but and I just often would just cry in the shower, and I would think, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Like, I should be enjoying this moment. Motherhood is beautiful, all the things that you hear. And I just thought something was wrong with me, that I was crying in the shower so frequently. And, years later, it's like you start talking about this with other mothers and realizing that every single one of them was doing the same thing. And so that was one of those big moments that really made me want to do something like this, to let mothers know that there's nothing wrong with you. This is okay. You will get through this, kind of a thing. But I don't want to paint a picture that motherhood is terrible, because it's certainly not. There's a reason people do it. And, this is just one of my favorite things, is just snuggle times or nap times, any time where you can kind of get cozy. And one of the beautiful things about motherhood is just that connection. You can't compare that connection you have with your child to anything else. And so I do try to paint both pictures, literally, of the beautiful parts and the difficult parts of motherhood. This one's called Fretful. Tedious. There's a lot of things in that backpack that are very tedious, and I have to do them all the time. Here's another Kid Graffiti. And this one's called Raw, another one of the artifacts. I hate making titles for artwork. It's a very necessary thing, right? You need to do it, especially when you have a series with 40 pieces in it so far. But this one, I actually kind of have fun making this title, with the double meaning. And any person who has been a nursing mother will understand that double meaning of raw. Unashamed. Another thing you don't really get warned about, although I feel like people are knowing about it more and more, and it's just kind of a funny one though, is the post-baby diaper, giant diaper underwear thing that you have to wear, and just walking around, and suddenly your world changes from being, composed and prideful to just unashamed and, you know what, let it all hang out kind of a thing. So this one's called Patience. And now we're in 2020. We switched to 2020 a few ago. It's another one that's kind of like the snapshot. This was literally a photo I took. I worked from a photo. Sometimes, like I said, I work from real life or current happenings, and this one is from a photo I took of my children dragging our poor cat around. Here's another kid graffiti. This one cracks me up because my son says, "This is me petting the cat." So that's apparently his face and his hand. Invasive. It's kind of about a lot of people in my life telling me I needed to have babies when I didn't want to have babies. And then when I did have babies, other people telling me I needed to not be having babies. So that's kind of the short version of what that's about. This one's called Judged. And Judged Again. And as far as process goes, this one's kind of a fun story for me. So when the pandemic first started, we at South Shore Arts started offering free online art workshops, we'll call them. But it was just a time once a week, once for adults and once for kids, to kind of get together and create artwork from our own homes, but through Zoom. And I did one where I introduced the idea of image harvesting and taking an image that you've created and ways that you can repeat that image in other artwork and reuse it. So I just took one of the ones that I had recently created for this series, and I started working on an example for image harvesting with that. And I just ended up really enjoying changing up the size a little. You know, I had gone from working very large to very small, and it was kind of refreshing to get a little bigger, although still manageable. But then, yeah, just repeating that image. And so it kind of set me in a new direction. I still stuck mostly to the 5x7s, but I worked a few of these larger pieces in, and I have a new one I'm working on too in this larger size. Multitasking, lots of things going on all at once. Here's another kid graffiti. You'll recognize the art reference there, obviously. This one's called Surreal, and this is my only directly pandemic-related painting. You know, we were walking around, and there's a lot of parks in our neighborhood that we walk to and visit. And so this was the first time that we got to a park, and, you know, it was taped up and closed, and it was a very weird experience. And so I decided to paint about it. But after painting about it, kind of decided, you know what, I don't really want to paint about this experience. I wanted to stick to just the other parts of motherhood that were part of the pandemic, but also separate from. So this is the only one that directly relates to that. This one's called Imaginative. We like to dress up in this house, and this was a Halloween costume. I had the tired eyes, and I wanted to include some joyful eyes too, because like I said, there's, you know, everything's very kind of duality with motherhood. It's tiring, but it's also joyful. And humbling. Man, motherhood is humbling. So nothing has brought me to my knees more than anything else in my life, and really just made big changes in my my stubborn attitude and my independent streak that I have, you know, and to really realize that, you know, I cannot just be a mother on my own. And I started really having to rely on my relationship with God, and just, yeah, it changed me a lot in that way. Here's another kid graffiti. So this is one of the larger ones. And so while the other kid graffitis, like I said, were very quick and just go for it, we did put a little more thought into this one. And it was both of my children working on this with me. And instead of me just creating something and passing it off to them, we kind of went back and forth and worked on this over time in the studio up on the easel. So it was kind of fun. Draining. Here's another title I had a little fun with the double meaning there. Anxious. I have never been an anxious person until I had children. I am anxious a lot more often than I used to be. Here's another kid graffiti, which Micah will appreciate. We were just discussing pee and poop jokes all the time, and they even did it in here, and I left it because that's reality. This one's called Energizing. Just another snapshot one, playful. Bathtub paints, love it. And so messy. So this is another one where I used the image harvesting idea. And it's one of my favorites from the whole series. I just really, it reminds me of just so many great things about being a mother. And I love the mud. I actually don't mind when my kids get mud everywhere. It's kind of, as long as they don't ruin things. And more in progress. So like I said, this is an ongoing project. So these are the ones that are complete, but I have a lot I'm working on right now. One area that I realized I didn't really do anything about was diapers. And diapers are a big part of motherhood and parenting in general. But I think it's one that people talk about a lot. But I do think you can't really leave diapers out. So I'm trying to think of a good way to incorporate diapers in a kind of like my perspective of it, and more snapshots of my kids and more precious moments. Micah and I were just talking about the other day too, of how much self-reflection comes out of being a parent. So I think I'll try to work something like that in there too. But I keep creating and I keep working on these, and I just really want them to be an opportunity for people to relate to and to not feel alone, and then to be able to share their experiences as well. So this exhibit was in northern Minnesota, and all the pieces that you've seen here were up there. And so the new ones and the ones that are still in my possession from this part of the series will be on this exhibit in August of 2021 at Kenosha Creative Space, which is obviously in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But yeah, hopefully you can ask any questions that you have for me, but also share your experiences, or maybe some way that you connected with one of the pieces, something it reminded you of. I try to keep faces out, and I try to keep things a little bit vague so that people can relate to them more. And I don't want it to just be about me and my experience, but like I said, just that sharing and communicating with other parents and mothers.
So Summer, I'm going to leave my camera off so as not to compete with you.
Okay.
But I did want to say that we had some comments. We had a comment where somebody appreciated the way that you were showing or talking about your shift in scale, just so that the viewer could kind of understand that. It's kind of hard when there's no sense of scale, I guess. So that was appreciated. I just wanted to not double check. I know the answer, but I wanted to go back and mention that you showed in your last slide, you showed that there was, sorry, I got distracted by something on our YouTube feed. I apologize. You mentioned that there was, your next show is in Kenosha at the Kenosha Creative Space. That I was wondering, people who have watched know that that's Francisco's space, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And so would it be possible for you to not only talk about maybe your relationship with Francisco, but also maybe just mention like your relationship with that space?
Yes, I would love to. So, like I said, we've lived in a lot of the Midwest, and one of those fantastic places was Kenosha, Wisconsin. We spent a little over a year in Kenosha, and I got to know Francisco just through his involvement in the arts scene there. He's very involved in all of the things that are going on, only one of which is his space called Kenosha Creative Space. And so I got to know him just from attending events and just getting out and trying to, network and create that that community that I mentioned early on that I thrive on. And so it's a space that's a creative space. There's space to actually work. There is equipment and tools and things like that. There's space to teach. And then there's exhibition space, and they also have live performance space. So it's kind of a creator space is what they call it. And that's where it'll be. And it's right downtown Kenosha.
I want to apologize. I have a feeling that somebody, if anybody's watching our YouTube feed, is somewhat inexplicably maybe stopped. So if I'm apologizing to nobody, then it's worthless. And if I'm apologizing to people who are still watching via YouTube, and I just sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay as well. I'm used to that. I'd like to include there is another comment. I'm sorry. I'd like to invite some people to talk about. Now there's a bunch of comments in the chat. They weren't coming into the Q&A, so I was missing some. So this is great. Okay, so somebody wanted to just give you some praise, but somebody also mentioned something about wanting to see change, or where they would love to see change, and like where, anything about your relationship with your spouse, or how you as an individual have changed. But they, if you want to talk to any of that, I think there's a question in there, but they also mentioned that they were really sort of, I thought it was great to see the vulnerability that you showed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was about my motherhood experience. And so it was way in that I realized, oh my gosh, I do have a partner in this. I'm not a single parent. I have a husband named John, who is a great father. And so that's one of the things when I said, like, I'm working on new ones, I really want to start working in my husband as well, and how that relationship is parenting together. And so one of the things that is both of our favorite is story time. And I love listening from, like, we take turns, and I'm downstairs and I can hear him upstairs reading to them with all of his voices and excitement. And so that's one of the ones I have in progress right now, is of them on the chair with their toes sticking out from underneath the book, reading together. So
I should probably be saying names, because people's names are attached to these. That's one of the reasons you use the chat Q&A. You're allowed to be anonymous. So Lois, again with praise, but then also mentioned that as a mother of adult children, it has her thinking about how motherhood never ends. So there you have that to look forward to, Summer.
yes.
And ideas for how she could, I guess it sounds like, maybe use that in her own art practice.
Hi, Lois. I do know Lois.
And Roberta said something about how you did an excellent job capturing many different aspects of motherhood. And she thinks that your exhibit will be a great platform for women to share their stories. And thanks you for your inspiration.
Thank you, Roberta.
Oh, and they just keep coming. And then Kathy's not a mother, but she was a caregiver to her husband and recognized similarities with her own experience. So I think that's kind of interesting, right? Like sometimes people, it's one of the things about artwork, right? Where, you definitely put your experience out there and your vulnerabilities, but they can trigger emotions in other people that have similar experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping, and I hadn't thought about just that caregiving aspect, how that could be relatable beyond parenting.
Trisha, with whom we work, thought it was very relatable, and she liked the kids' drawings a lot. And then she said, as a mother of 2 adult boys, all of the images still relate no matter what age. So yeah. I'm wondering if that's the sophomoric humor, and specifically, which was actually the crux of your and my conversation the other day when we were discussing the pee and poop jokes. And then I asked you, the key here is, of course, what's John, your husband's sense of humor, to which you just sort of shook your head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we were talking about, I keep wondering when they'll grow out of the potty humor. And then I think about first I would think about my nephew, who's a teenager now, and still there, and then my husband and still there. So maybe I have that to look forward to for a while.
Well, I have a question ready to ask Summer, but I'm going to, let people know that you're encouraged to share your experiences or ask a question. Again, you can use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. Well, it's in the bottom of my screen, but it's wherever your docking bar is. And then you can also choose to chat us as well. We're monitoring both of those. I wanted to ask a little bit, do you see a time in your near future or distant future where you might return to larger scale work?
I do. I think about it off and on. I still just, I mentioned I don't mind mud, and I don't mind when the kids are running around in it and making a mess. And I think that comes a lot from just my personal love for getting messy too. And so that is the one thing I have really enjoyed this artistic practice of, regularly creating artwork and about this specific experience or period in my life. But I do miss the mess, and I do miss just large scale work. So I know I'll get back there. I don't really see it in the near future. It's still just not practical for where I'm at. But yeah, and I think there are times when maybe I'll get like a one-off experience of, you know, the opportunity to make a mess a little bit, and I get the art supplies out and we make messes together sometimes. And so I do still get to do some of that art mess making as well. Just not generally for my own artistic practice. And actually pretty soon I'm going to get to make a mess with some teenagers. We have a teen arts board, and we're going to be making a very large mural, and I'm going to try to leave it up to them, but I'll probably get in there and make a few messes and hopefully some nice artwork too.
Yeah, I think that everybody, I mean, I imagine at this point, it's not like you're new to South Shore Arts anymore, that most people probably know that you're the director of education. I, of course, mentioned it. But Summer also taught youth drawing until she couldn't anymore because we gave her a job as the director of education. Well, first the education program manager, and it was just more than she could reasonably so handle it at that time, because we're asking her to work on the weekdays and the weekend, and that just had to stop. So Summer, we have, as long as I have been here, we've tried to make a habit of showing the artwork and the art practice at some point during the series of our teachers, and sometimes our staff. And so that's just a little bit of this. And as Summer mentioned, she works with the Teen Arts Board still. But when Summer first started working with us, she worked, her very first thing she did with South Shore Arts was work as an instructor at a school where we were doing some art instruction during part of the school day, or during the school day, at East Chicago Urban Enterprise Academy. And it just happened to coincide with also the time when another one of our longtime artists who's done work with us and has taught for us was doing a mural project with that school because he had family that attended that school. And so across the street from this mostly elementary school, there was a middle school program as well. Summer and I and this teaching artist of ours worked with the young people to paint this large scale mural. So I think that there are at times when you still get to get that out of your system, as you mentioned with this upcoming mural project with the Teen Arts Board.
Yes.
So we have a Kathleen who apologized. She said she's sorry she missed your show when it was in Minnesota, but she's really enjoys seeing how you reflect on your growth as an artist and a woman.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Lots of very nice comments. Somebody else who loved the graffiti ones. I love the graffiti ones. One comment saying they're surprised there were no pacifier images, or more of those what did you call them?
Right.
Artifact images, I guess.
Yeah. Pacifiers weren't a big thing in this house.
Right.
I should do one though, because when my older son got rid of his pacifier, we put it in an envelope so that we could mail it to all the new babies coming at the hospital. It was kind of a fun experience. Obviously, no babies were actually getting his used pacifier, but that's kind of how we said goodbye to that. So,
is that the narrative you use to help him let go?
Yes.
Yes, gotcha. Uh, I'm sorry. Oh, so this is a nice, very personal story. So uh, Chelsea wrote to say that your work is beautiful, and as a mom, she can relate to so much of the work, and that her husband and her just put their daughter to bed, and while they were started watching the exhibit, or I guess the presentation, uh, she was finishing pumping, and then they watched it the rest of it while she was putting dinner together. So that sounds like the way you describe it to me, at least, a textbook sort of
Yeah.
um, motherhood experience.
Yeah, I did invite a lot of mothers that I know, and they said they'll do their best, but it's bedtime for a lot of young folks. And I said, "Oh, I know how those babies dictate your schedule in the evening." So, yeah, they do.
we there are
Try to.
many there are
I mean,
many ways we try to keep Art and Focus family friendly, and perhaps even more so than in the past when it was live, and in person and with no recording devices present. But I think that our start and end time is not by any means family friendly.
but I
Um,
told them all it's recorded. You can watch it anytime.
I, Oh, and then so somebody said they're thankful for they're grateful for the presentation, Mary, this is, and then they're curious about my blue ribbon.
Yes.
Um, it isn't about me tonight, but I will, since asked, take a moment to sort of just talk about my ribbon. It's actually a rosette, and it's not blue. I'll get a little close. It's sort of a plaid or tartan fabric. Oh, there we go. Um, and I got this in graduate school when I was at the University of Illinois Chicago. One of my my peers, I guess, my fellow graduate students, they were a metalsmith, and they were very interested in materials more broadly speaking. So it's probably not worth showing, but it's got a kind of beautiful finding on the back. But she was very interested in rosettes and how they were used for political allegiance or affiliation. And she did a lot of rosettes that were in the style of various historical uh, rosette structures, and some of them were more political than others. And then any of us who modeled them for some of her photo shoots because they're wearables, right? We got one. So most of the jewelry, in fact, that I wear, because I do wear jewelry, most of the jewelry that I wear during Art and Focus was given to me or purchased from that particular metalsmith, who will be a guest of ours. It's sort of all this,
Yeah.
not very dramatic foreshadowing, but she will be the last Art and Focus guest this year. So Carrie Ann Quick, who's a professor of metals at San Diego State University, and then she can talk much more eloquently about this, as well as all other wearable objects, wearable art that I have adorned throughout the Art and Focus series this year. So thank you, Mary.
While we're looking at Micah's space, we can talk about the chicken behind him. Micah likes to pick out artwork that relates, and he thought his chicken didn't relate. And I said, actually, I really think it does, because children are kind of like chickens. They run around, they make a lot of noise, and you never know what they're going to do. So
I apologize this summer when we started that I didn't have one that was more relatable. I only have so much art, right? And I'm not a huge collector. So I do try to pick one out every week. And then I told her I was going to steal her joke because she came up with the chicken joke.
I did it before you could steal it.
Right. Well, I was going to steal it at my preamble when I welcomed everybody, but then I realized that I was talking for a long time, and so I stopped. And I said, "We'll either get to the joke or we won't get to the joke, but it's not going to be funny if I try to squeeze it in." So this was better.
Yeah, we got it in there.
Well, Summer, I'm going to give people a few more minutes. I'm going to check the Q&A. It's been mostly a chat audience tonight.
Yeah. I know that if any of the pieces reminded you of something, I know some people already shared that, but or yeah, if there's moments in your experience that you feel like weren't represented, and some of my paintings, came from, well, most of them came directly from my own experience, but once in a while I'm talking to another mother and they'll be talking about what's happening in their room right now while we're trying to talk, and I'll say, oh my gosh, can I paint that? And so there are a few. There was one that I did not paint, but I keep thinking about it, and I won't go into the whole story, but they had an elderly dog that had just wet the floor, and a toddler who is potty training. And so while we're on the phone, she's holding a toddler in the air, screaming, please don't pee, running across the room to try to get to the bathroom and leaping over dog urine on the floor. I thought that was an extraordinary motherhood moment. So I haven't painted about that one yet. It's not mine, but
So many ideas, so little time.
yeah.
We did get one, went in the Q&A, but it's Bridget. And Bridget was watching tonight while she had her AirPods in and was rocking her screaming child,
Mhm.
her new baby, to sleep, who is either, in her estimation, either teething or going through a regression. But she felt comforted by hearing these stories of motherhood and relating to all those new mother emotions. So, I mean, I think that speaks to some, that somewhat speaks to one of the things it seems like you're trying to do here, which is to bring into the open that which people don't talk about so that you could build community and not feel alone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an infinite tunnel, but
I've I've talked to you on some days where you don't seem to be seeing the light, I'll be honest.
yeah, no,
Um,
you don't see the light every day.
well, and you know, it feels like we're moving towards wrapping up, but I wanted to also mention that, like, you know, this is your art and focus season. I think people don't see that as much. You know, some of the stuff is carried over from the last season when we had to cancel, but that you've programmed this season. And I think it feels a lot different from the programming that I have done in the past. And I think I want to make sure that, you know, I say it every week. I want to make sure people know that this is mostly your doing this year, this art and focus programming. And I say that all not just to put you on the spot and you know, give you all the credit while the camera's on you, but also to say that, like, I think there are things that come through about your sense of compassion and your sense of art as a method or a means to build community. And so I look back to the very first art and focus, which was with Sam. And for those of you who didn't join us that day, it's on our YouTube channel, so you could still see it. But Sam is a musician from Grand Rapids. Well, I'm not sure if he's actually in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, but you know, and his story was very much, in some ways, the same as what Summer's doing, which is bringing that which people don't talk about into the open, so that one, he can connect and feel like he has a place, but so that others feel like they can connect if they have other trying experiences that pose existential sort of crisis. And not only that, but that's another example of Summer reaching out to somebody and connecting with that individual to help them not feel alone. And so I think that that comes through in your programming, Summer. I think that's very clear. That's your hallmark, your stamp.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome. Amber has not a question, but more of a comment. She loves the unashamed image and the vulnerability, I guess, unashamed images and the vulnerability of what you said about the body. There's the surprise of what happens to you after childbirth, things people never told you about, like the adult diapers, for one. It makes me think about your reference to Frida Kahlo and so much of her artwork that shows the trauma of her bodily experiences. There are so many ways that there are so many bodily experiences, excuse me, I'm reading very tiny print. There are so many bodily experiences that nobody talks about: injury, surgery, birth, etc.
Yeah, one that I'm working on figuring out how to represent visually in a way that's true to what it is part of that bodily experience. And, you know, you go, like I said, pre-baby was a very stubborn, independent, autonomous person. And then you literally have a being growing inside of your body. And then you think, oh, I can't wait to have my body back to myself. But then you have that baby, and that baby is literally latched to you frequently. And and then even as they get older, especially in the toddler years, they are latched to your leg frequently, pulling on your shirt or wrapping around your leg while you're doing a million things. And you really do lose that not even personal space, but that sense that your body is your own. You feel like you give your body to that being for a very long time. And so, eventually I'm at a point now where I feel like I have that back. And but but that was a big surprise to me and something I didn't really think of. And like I said, I thought, okay, now once I have this baby and it's literally not in me anymore, I'll have that back. And it took a lot longer than that. And that was surprising to me. So, but yeah, then there's also like the unashamed aspect of it, of, feeling more modest or guarded before, and then just walking around, stuff hanging out. Nobody cares. This is, if you do, you should probably not be here, kind of a thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of body experiences involved.
Yeah. I don't have a response to that.
No, that's okay.
I kind of wish, I mean, I don't have a response to that. I kind of wish that, and we have that ability for like some of the people who are asking us questions to sort of raise their hand and have them talk to you directly, because it feels more appropriate than me in this context, reading their questions. But I do understand the power of that and the importance of talking about it. Summer, I'm going to give people about a 5 count to maybe throw another comment in the chat, or another question. We're just getting some great jobs, some just, some praise. I guess what I'm going to do now, and if people want to throw a last question up there, I'm willing to not end on my traditional closing. I can come back to it, but to give everybody a little bit of time to pull their thoughts together, I want to make sure to go over sort of some of the things that I went over at the beginning, and one thing that I forgot in particular about South Shore Arts. So just a reminder that next week we're scheduled to have Peter, who works under the name Labor Camp, doing the same thing Summer did, but different content for an hour. He's going to join us and talk about his posters that are up. The Labor Camp Daily COVID-19 report. I think it's actually just COVID-19 report. I throw the daily in there a lot. It's a lot of words. Sometimes I get them wrong, but the gist of it is there's some really nice posters in our gallery right now, and Peter's going to talk about some of them next week. And our spring classes. Maybe I should just let Summer say our spring classes, because that's her department.
That is my department. Spring registration is open and opened up a couple weeks ago, and spring classes start March 29th. So we've got a couple weeks left to sign up. We've got in-person classes in the studios, and we also have online classes, which are done a little bit like that, but with a little more interaction, where everyone can see each other's faces and artwork. So we have options, and everything in studio is COVID safe, and obviously on Zoom is also COVID safe. So
you can either do that online at our website, or you can call Summer directly. Her phone number is on our website, but it's 219-836-1839, extension 100, I believe.
103.
103. It's not 100. 103. I'm going to thank Summer one more time for being put on the spot, and for I'm going to thank her family for being quiet or finding something else to do for an hour at this late hour for children. And I think with that, we're just sort of going to end the broadcast and hope everybody joins us next time.
Yeah, I do want a second thank you to my husband. He is upstairs parenting right now and doing a good job, because I haven't heard a peep. So thank you. And thanks, Micah.
You're welcome. I'm going to stop the live stream.